all weekend after she left that party, she had ruminated on all the thoughts, all the things that came out of her mouth. She replayed the events. And I think anyone out there with ADHD who experiences RSD can reflect on times where you've like, oh my gosh, why did I say that? Oh my gosh. And you relive the terror like it's real and you feel humiliated all over again. I ask her, so what evidence do we have that this friend is now rejecting you? After we took several minutes to kind of identify what would actually classify as her being rejected, we were able to determine that, oh, I'm not being rejected at all. In fact, my friend has followed up with me. We have another hangout scheduled in a few months. But because of ADHD and how it impacts our brains and how we tend to hyperfixate on things, whether they're negative or positive, she just got latched onto this belief.
Welcome to Successful with ADHD. I'm Brooke Schnittman. Let's get started. Hi, everyone. Today is a very special episode of Successful with ADHD. I am so thrilled that in ADHD fashion, after 4 attempts of doing this, today I have Coach Kelly Dyches, who is an ADHD and growth mindset coach with over 16 years of mentoring neurodiverse individuals of all ages and working directly with ADHDers since 2020. Coach Kelly has graduated from ADGA, ADD Coach Academy, and she is a lifelong learner, deeply interested in neuroplasticity, holistic wellness, and life management. She spent countless hours honing in on her skills in goal setting, organization, and project management. And she's coached hundreds of individuals with ADHD from childhood to adulthood. And she is an extremely popular coach who's worked directly with me in our signature process 3C activation and healing ADHD emotions. I am thrilled to showcase Coach Kelly. Welcome.
Woo woo! Hey, hey.
Yeah!
So finally be here.
We did it. So in most of the episodes of Successful with ADHD, we talk about the ADHD journey and then we go into what happened after the ADHD diagnosis. And Coach Kelly has ADHD. Please just tell me when you learned you had ADHD and how you've brought that into the coaching that you do today.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a child who has ADHD and who's on the autism spectrum. And so as a young mother, I was looking for resources and all the information to help manage his ADHD because at that time it felt unbearable. And so as I was exploring resources and looking into the DSM-5, I soon realized that all of the criteria that would diagnose someone with ADHD were all traits, all symptoms that I experienced every day of my life. And so it was a big light bulb moment of, oh my word, this explains everything about me, why I behave the way I do, why certain things are difficult. And so from there, I began this journey of wanting to learn everything I could about the in and outs, the inner workings of ADHD, so that I could not only just help myself, so that I could then help my son. And from there, I realized, oh, this is kind of a big issue. Lots of people have ADHD. And so that's kind of where it began.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's so common, right, that we see in our clients where they have been diagnosed, especially women, after their children got diagnosed, especially around COVID time. Now, I know your diagnosis was in 2018, but it's so powerful to kind of just like see your life flash in front of you through the lens of the diagnosis of your son.
Absolutely.
So you got diagnosed in 2018. Then you decided you wanted to be an ADHD coach. So tell me about that journey.
Yeah. Actually, I was reflecting on this because I wanted to remember the kind of the steps that took place. So I remember joining this Facebook group all about adults with ADHD. And someone posed the question, what is the worst symptom that you deal with your ADHD? There were hundreds of responses. And we're talking, I'm late to everything. I am so disorganized. My house is a mess. Like everything that you can think of with ADHD. So I started reading through that post, and I wanted to collect some data. I just got really curious about it. Like, wow, I wonder what the common thread is. I wonder what the majority of these people say is the hardest part. So I literally hand wrote, because, technology was hard, clear back in 2019. We didn't have AI. So I hand wrote literally everything that was mentioned and then put check marks next to every single symptom that was relatable to multiple people.
Wow.
At the end, I discovered that self-esteem was the highest thing. And as someone with ADHD who once had suicidal thoughts because I did not know my worth, because I compared myself to everyone else, and because I didn't understand why I behaved the way I did, I said, not on my watch. Not on my watch will all these people suffer with low self-esteem, not knowing who they are or why they're special, what they have to offer this world. And so that is literally what lit a fire underneath my bum and got me to want to explore becoming an ADHD coach, because I wanted to help people realize just how wonderful and special they are despite these struggles, and to learn how to essentially grow their self-esteem so they didn't have to feel what I had felt for so long.
So powerful. Oh, I just got chills in you talking about, what you've been through and wanting to help and heal so many people, because that you not wanting them to experience what you have gone through. So when you got the ADHD coach certification and training, did you feel like you became more confident? Talk to me a little bit about that. Or did you just have the tools to get coached, and then later on through practice and management, you felt more empowered and confident?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I got out of my training with ADCA was just this overall awareness of how ADHD impacts every single aspect of life. It affects your relationships. It affects you responding to a text. It affects your ability to stay organized at work. It affects your home life, every single thing. And so just gaining that knowledge of the different executive functions of ADHD and how it really impacts, I believe was the biggest takeaway for me there. Now, we learned how to properly coach people, and we learned about personal transformation, but it wasn't until I was able to really apply those principles and start working with people that I really grew the most. And that's where you come into the picture. So you took a chance on me taking this newly
Take a chance.
graduated.
I want to sing this song.
Took a chance on me. Do-do-do-do. Okay. Anyway, yes. Thank you, Abba. I love that. I cannot not sing. By the way, this is a side note. If something
Kelly has an amazing voice, so I'll leave the singing to you.
Oh, bless you. Okay, but back to you. So you took a chance on me where I was freshly done with ADCA, and you brought me onto your team and started giving me exposure to all different types of clients. I had kids, I had young adults, I had adult professionals. And it was that exposure that really started me making these improvements in my own life, but also being able to help others.
How so? So the exposure helped you in your own life. So we know how you helped others because there's been countless testimonials. If you just go on to Coaching with Brooke Google reviews, it's like, Kelly this, Kelly that. And I've personally heard them. But what did the exposure do for you to help you transform?
I think there's two parts of this. The first part is when you repeat tools over and over and over, because you're teaching them, right? I want to mention as a side note, an ADHD coach sometimes wears a mentor or a teacher hat. And so when I'm wearing one of those hats, I'm educating my client, right? So if I'm educating my client about a tool that may help them that they're fully unaware of, and I repeat that to the next client and the next client, it becomes so ingrained in my brain that it's like, why don't I use the dang tool too? I'm preaching
It's
this,
helping them.
right? So, but how did I learn those tools? And I think this is an important part is I was so hungry for information on ADHD, how to help people, how to help them with their self-esteem, how to help them with time management. So I was trying to gather all these external tools to help people. And then I asked you, I said, Brooke, I really, really want to learn 3C activation. I want to teach it. Would you ever be open to having me facilitate that? And again, you took a chance on me. And so I
Are you going to
observed.
stay here?
No, I will control myself. I will have impulse control and not see. Okay, just kidding. You took a chance on me to allow me to learn and observe multiple 3C groups that you were teaching or that another coach was teaching. So I, again, hand wrote all the notes. I observed every call and I wrote down every important bit of information that I needed to share so that I could memorize that whole program. And after probably listening to it and hearing those principles and those tools taught over and over, I believe it was the third time going through it that I was like, why on earth am I not using these practical tools that are amazing? These testimonials of people coming away from 3C saying how it's been so life-changing for them. I'm just focused on memorizing how to do the dang presentation. Why not utilize those tools to make my own life better? And that's when the real changes started to happen. I would be considered severely ADHD because I think genetically I'm ADHD, but then I also had a major head injury. And so as a kid, and so the ADHD symptoms seemed so unfixable for me, but they weren't. I just needed the proper tools, the proper systems. I needed to learn about accountability and how to properly set goals in a way that works with my brain as opposed to against it. And so as I learned all these things from all my studying inside and outside of 3C activation, I gained all these beautiful tools that really, really changed my life. I finally felt like I had control of this busy brain of mine. And that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. I'm so excited to hear that because, and we'll come back to that, like when coaches get trained in 3C activation, they're like, how is it different than other programs, blah, blah, blah. But you go through, for the coach training for 3C activation, you go through the program as a client while picking up the tools. And I think in anything, like, how do you teach something unless you've experienced the transformation? And you said, like, ADHD coaching isn't just life coaching. It's explicitly telling people how their symptoms are showing up as ADHD and how it's impacting their life while doing life coaching, right? But if you don't have that awareness and you don't have those tools, right, it's a lot of repeated open-ended questions that those are all great, but like you need practical tools too for structure for ADHD because we hate structure but thrive on it at the same time. So I appreciate that has been a part of your journey as well as a coach who's coaching the program and using it in your everyday life as well.
Yes, I would say amen to all of that.
Emotional regulation is a big part of ADHD, right? It's not just managing organization, prioritization, productivity, but while we're doing all that, we can get flooded. Our executive functions can shut down. We're charged, right? How do you help clients with their emotional regulation as well so then they can activate their executive functions?
I think it comes with coaching practice where when you get on a call with someone, you can kind of observe their energy and see in their face, if it's a good day or a rough day or whatnot. We always start with a win to kind of set the tone, make them reflect on something positive to kind of get them away from that negative space. But if I notice that a client is not able to find a win, or they're not able to change their energy, and they're kind of in the stuck place, we start to go into it and explore, like, what's going on in your world. One of the best tools that I have is to distract the mind, because when we are ruminating, it leads to anxiety. It can lead to depression and depressive thoughts, right? And so when we are stuck in this rumination cycle, we have to pattern interrupt in order to break free. And it's not to like stuff the emotions down and just ignore them, that they're not there, but we need to do something that is productive. And so one simple tool that I really like is the five senses technique. And this is a
Mm,
really popular thing that they use in lots of therapies, but it's literally go into the five senses. We have sight, we have touch, we have hearing, we have scent,
taste, right?
taste, right? And so you essentially 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, you go through and you find the things that are hitting or stimulating those five senses. And it really just, it's a temporary fix, but it's a simple way to calm your nervous system so that you can get into the present moment. Now, that's just a simple thing. But if you don't mind, I'd love to share a story about how a client came very dysregulated, very upset,
Yes,
was
please.
coming with a lot of baggage. Now, this client has extreme RSD. And for those who don't know what RSD stands for, it's rejection sensitive dysphoria. It's an extreme sensitivity to any type of rejection, whether it's real or perceived. And so she had gone to a party over the weekend, and with someone that was very, very close to her, someone that she's known for years and years. And all weekend after she left that party, she had ruminated on all the thoughts, all the things that came out of her mouth at that event. She replayed the events. And I think anyone out there with
Mm.
ADHD who experiences RSD can reflect on times where you've like, oh my gosh, why did I say that? Oh my gosh. And you relive the
Oh,
terror,
yeah. Like
the,
it's real.
like it's real, and you feel humiliated all over again. So she shares this with me. And I asked her, I said, okay, so what evidence do we have that this friend is now rejecting you? And after we took several minutes to kind of identify what would actually classify as her being rejected, we were able to determine that, oh, I'm not being rejected at all. In
Wow.
fact, my friend has followed up with me. In fact, we have another hangout scheduled in a few months. But because of ADHD and how it impacts our brains and how we tend to hyperfixate on things, whether they're negative or positive, she just got latched onto this belief. And so she and I worked on, ants,
Mm-hmm.
ANTS, automatic negative thoughts, right? One of the tools that I worked on with her is identifying when those mean thoughts come. A tool that we used is calling that name, or excuse me, calling that voice a name. So it's
Mm.
outside of you.
In third person almost.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And so when you,
I'm not that, but this, yeah.
yeah, your higher self would never talk that way to yourself, right?
Right.
But that mean voice will. And so that voice needs to be called a name, and maybe even a hideous name. And as we talked about where these negative thoughts show up and the frequency in which they are showing up, and how to combat them, her nervous system was able to calm down. She realized that with new data, new information, she didn't have to believe those negative thoughts that were holding her down and making her feel poorly about herself. And so sometimes when clients come in, I have to help them get unstuck from the negative thought patterns that are really causing a lot of damage to their lives, and help them see that it's not always true. It's not, maybe it's not at all true. But I think
Yeah.
that's a lot, or managing thoughts will help regulate the nervous system greatly.
Yeah, it is. It's very challenging to regulate time and make a positive impact on your ADHD if you can't regulate your emotions, right? And emotions are so tied into ADHD. And I know you said that like we could hyperfixate on positive, we can hyperfixate on negative. So true. And then when we hear these negative things, or we perceive that these negative things are happening, those stick so much more, right, than the positives too. So it becomes its own identity. And because we generally hear so many more negative thoughts growing up because of the unmanaged ADHD symptoms, that also impacts our rejection sensitive dysphoria. So tell me, so once that client identified that her friend didn't think those negative things about her, what happens next with her?
Yeah, I think sometimes verbally processing and you hearing yourself talk back, and maybe someone's reflecting back what they hear, you realize sometimes that the thoughts or beliefs that you had are not even close to what you're really feeling. And so what we were able to uncover was that maybe she had an underlying belief that she was a bad friend, and that
Hmm.
being a bad friend because she is slow to text people back. She doesn't always invite people to hang out because she doesn't call friends, even really good friends. She doesn't call them regularly. So that somehow made her
Hmm.
a bad friend. But once we dissected, like, okay, well, that might be your criteria for a good friend, but what is getting in the way? There's a lot of executive functioning that goes into remembering everyone that you need to remember and think of. There's a wall of dread sometimes that we have to get over. And so I helped her to see that, okay, it takes planning, it takes task initiation, it takes emotional regulation, it takes organization to do a lot of these things that make it easier to be a good friend. And if you struggle with those executive functions and you don't quite yet have the tools or have those skills, then maybe a bad friend has bad intentions, and it's not about the execution. It's about,
Hmm.
you have a good heart. You want to show up for these friends. You have executive dysfunction that makes it difficult. And that is beyond you. That's not your personality. That's not a character flaw. That is just some tools. That is just some skills. And once we put it in that way, the weight was lifted off of her. She could see, like, oh my gosh, okay, there is hope. I actually am a very caring friend. We were also able to find more data points where she is a good friend, where she did call friends, where she did remember birthdays. And so it's finding that data, that evidence to disprove the original negative thought that is key to unraveling and changing beliefs in the first place.
Oh, I love that.
Also, but also identifying where the ADHD symptoms are holding you back.
I know Gottman, who you're very familiar with too, says to cancel out one negative, you need 5 positives. And I mean, that's everyone. That's not just ADHD people. So I can't even imagine, right, what she must have been feeling at that moment. I mean, I guess I can, but I'm not her. So how many more positives she needed to hear and how she needed to change the wiring of her brain to think differently and had to practice that. So along the way of your coaching journey with her, how did things shift for her? So that was one session, two sessions, but month later, 2 months later.
What I've seen and what she would share that she's observed is that she is noticing the negative thoughts way more often. So the negative thoughts don't necessarily go away, but when you can notice them, notice the events or the people or the situations that tend to bring them out, then you can do something about it. So she has been actively working on managing those thoughts when she catches them, to rewire and think of a different way to reframe it, whether that's saying the exact opposite of what that negative thought was, or putting a positive spin on it, looking for the silver lining. I've seen such a shift in her self-esteem as well. I think our first call, I think when you finally find someone who understands you, and there's this emotional release for a lot of clients where it's like, oh my gosh, and I struggle with this and this, and they don't want to be judged, but they know they're safe because I have ADHD too. And it's just this big, like, emotional release, we'll call it, to go from that to who she is now, feeling more and more confident in herself, able to catch the negative thoughts, reframe them, talking to herself in a way better way, understanding her brain in a way that separates struggle of an ADHD brain versus character flaws. It's amazing. Like, she carries herself differently. Like, you can see it on the calls where her energy is just different because she actually gets it. She understands what's going on, and she doesn't have to be a victim to her brain. That negativity bias does not have to hold her back.
I love that. And while you were talking about that emotional release and everything that she started noticing about her automatic negative thoughts, how they don't go away, right? Those negative thoughts are there. It's so interesting that coaching can be hard and easy at the same time, right? When we start noticing our negative thoughts, like, it's a roller coaster. It doesn't necessarily feel good that you're noticing all these negative thoughts. But when you get those tools that you mentioned that helps you replace the negative thought or shift the negative thought, that helps. So it could feel like very cumbersome and exhausting and emotional at first, right?
Yes.
But that's where you come in with, okay, right? We've noticed this, we're recognizing this, and here's that tool. Let's go back into your toolbox and pull from that so we can shift all of these flooding and awareness of the negative thoughts that you've had on yourself for so long.
Mm-hmm. She wasn't resistant to tools, but needed a little bit extra hand holding, which I was happy to do check-ins. So I often will make an agreement with the client, like, okay, the goal, we establish the goal together, and usually it requires them to text me when you've done it. Well, I didn't hear from her. So I text her, hey, how's it going with managing your negative thoughts? And that simple reminder, that external motivation, was enough to be like, oh yeah, I want to focus on that. And so in her being accountable to me by sharing, what she's working on and how things are going, who is she actually being accountable to?
Herself.
And so that little bit of hand holding at the beginning where it's like multiple check-ins, like, hey, how are things going? I think was the exact thing that she needed to have the reminder, but also that little bit of pressure to focus on it more. And once she realized how easy it was to focus on it, and what I mean by that is focus on the goal of reframing negative thoughts as they come, she was able to start doing it more and more on her own. And I was able to pull back and wait for her to reach out to me.
That's so great. And like, it almost became automated because if you think about it, like people say, oh, ADHD people can't build a routine. Well, that's bullshit. I mean, like you can, right? Think about all the things that have been automated in your life. Like if you really dig deep, when you wake up, what's the first thing that you do? Even if it's an unhealthy automation, you're doing something, right? Whether it be looking at your phone, whether it be drinking less of water, like whatever it is, you're pretty much doing it likely all the time. So you can build that habit, but it does require more external accountability, especially with someone with ADHD, at least in the beginning, to build that habit.
Yeah. And I do find that some clients are resistant to that, where they are resistant to wanting to use tools like accountability or body doubling, even because they don't trust themselves to follow through. That's part of it. But the bigger issue is that they don't want to have to be dependent on having external accountability. And so what we find though is that oftentimes a little bit of extrinsic pressure helps an ADHDer to push themselves to get going. And so it's just a tool. It's not codependent to want to text a friend and say, hey, I have to do all my laundry today. Will you text me in 30 minutes to see where I'm at?
Yeah. So, Kelly, you are 5 years into coaching. What are the differences that you see now, 5 years into it as a coach, right? And they say it can take 5 years to become a master at your trade compared to when you first became a coach.
Oh gosh. Okay, so I know the answer to this. And when I first got started, I was super emotionally invested in everyone's well being. Like, everyone needs to be saved by Kelly, and she will make sure that that person walks away with an amazing self esteem and they have the ability to live their very best life and that their ADHD is perfectly managed. So I put that on myself to ensure that they were so taken care of. But I realized how emotionally draining that was when someone would show up and be very human and say, hey, I didn't do what we talked about. I couldn't find the time. It's okay. Let's just keep trying. And because I really have a growth mindset and I want to help others develop that, I never wanted to shame someone for not following through. It's human. And with our ADHD brains, we just figure out what got in the way, right? But at that point in my early coaching journey, it felt personal. It felt like, oh, I screwed up. Maybe I didn't teach them the proper tools to help them. And so I think one of the biggest takeaways now is that I am so in it with my clients in the call. I'm so present. And when that call is done, I set up little reminders in my phone to check in on them throughout the week. But beyond that, I can separate and let them live their own lives and not take it on myself.
Because ultimately it's their goal, it's their right. They are having to do the work and you're there as their guide.
Yeah, absolutely. I think another amazing skill that I've developed is just how to manage my time, because I'm a homeschool mom and I was having to, figure out when to coach people, around my homeschooling hours. And so I've had to become really, really good at staying organized, setting myself up for success, meaning knowing what meals I was going to have on a given day so that I can just bust through, do my calls, do homeschooling, do more calls, make dinner. And that skill only came from what I learned from 3C when I started to apply it. And so that I feel like I'm actually really good at managing my time. But P.S., in my previous marriage, I was late to everything. I was so chronically late that it was like I was the butt of everyone's jokes, right? And I identified as that. Like, yep, Kelly's always late. But now I have a new identity, and I'm actually rarely late these days. And so that, I think, was something that I was forced into learning, because I was so busy in those early days, that I had to figure out that skill. And if I know anything about
Yeah.
the ADHD brain, we can do anything. We can figure anything out, under the right circumstances and with the right tools. And I did.
100%. Yeah. So, Kelly, what would be one thing? This is the hardest question that gets answered. Are you ready?
Spaghetti. Let's hear it.
Spaghetti. What would be the one tool that you would want ADHDers listening to walk away with?
The tool that has changed more lives with my clients, where they walk in and they're emotional and they leave and they are flying high, not because of any illicit substances, but because they are feeling good about life, right? Is a changing beliefs activity. And I'm going to quickly describe what it is. So essentially, you write down the 1 to 5 negative thoughts that you are experiencing right now. Anything, if it is negative and it is impacting your life and causing you pain, you write it down. Then the second part is you take each one of those negative beliefs and you start to dismantle it. Meaning, okay, I have evidence that makes me believe the negative thought, but I need to look for evidence that means that that is not always true. Let's use me being late for an example. I'm always late. I can never be on time. It's just a belief, right? When I could start collecting data that said, well, actually, there was that one time when I got the diaper bag ready with all the food and snacks, and I got to church on time. So I'm not late all the time. Oh, and there was that one time when I was 5 minutes early to the dentist. So I guess I'm not always late, right? So essentially, you have to look for data to dismantle that belief. Now, I have encountered clients who can't. They cannot find any data to dismantle that belief. And so then we make a goal out of it. Okay, what can you do to create data, to create evidence that you're trying, that you're aspiring to do better with this thing? Because with new data that we shine a light on, our mindset can change. We can think new thoughts. So the next part of this activity is to then write down 3 to 5 beliefs that you want to hold about yourself, that you believe would make you feel better about yourself. And then again, you look for data to prove that that is already happening, or to prove that it has happened already in the past, that you are that person that you want to be. And as you take that information and really play around with it, and what I mean by that is read it regularly, the positive things, and add to it, add new data points, your mindset and your negative beliefs about yourself will shift, because you can't go on believing something that isn't true if you have new data that totally dismantled it. So that, for me, is one of the best tools that has literally changed so many lives in my coaching practice, that I would love to use on anyone. Because, and I say that because when someone comes in and they have all this baggage and they're thinking all these negative thoughts and their nervous system is all dysregulated, I can't fully teach them the ADHD tools. They're not going to hear them. So I have to get to the core first. I have to build their self-esteem and their self-trust first. And then we can teach tools that they'll actually be able to implement.
So good. ADHD Coach Kelly, growth mindset Coach Kelly, mom with ADHD of an ADHDer. Thank you so much for your time. and you are so valued. We are so blessed to have you on the Coaching with Brooke team.
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity, and thank you for letting me be a part of the beautiful team.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Successful with ADHD. I hope it helps you on your journey. And if you need any additional support for you or a loved one with ADHD, feel free to reach out to us at coachingwithbrooke.com and all social media platforms at Coaching with Brooke. And remember, it's Brooke with an E. Thanks again for listening. See you next time.